I was eating breakfast when my husband calmly said, "I'm going to stay at my ex's place for a month, so it's not really wrong if I tell you first." His daughter watched me like it was some funny challenge. I didn't argue. I wrote up the papers and let them sign. A month later they came back begging me to undo it. My husband announced he was leaving me for a month to live with his ex-wife while I was eating breakfast. Not leaving me, he clarified, just taking a break. Being honest. Transparent. He said it like he deserved a medal for telling me to my face instead of sneaking around. His daughter watched me from across the kitchen, waiting for me to break down so she could capture it on her phone and post it for her friends. My son sat frozen, confused and scared. And I sat there with my spoon halfway to my mouth, yogurt dripping back into the bowl, and felt something inside me go completely cold and quiet. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just nodded slowly and said, "Okay. Let me make a phone call." That phone call changed everything. But to understand why I reacted that way, why I didn't scream or beg or fall apart, you need to know who I was before that morning. You need to understand the life I'd built, the warning signs I'd been collecting like evidence. And the moment I decided I wasn't going to be the kind of woman who ignored what was right in front of her face. My name is Addison Hayes. I'm 37 years old and I work as an ICU nurse at a Level 2 trauma center in Charleston, South Carolina. Every single morning my alarm goes off at 5 a.m. in the dark. I roll out of bed, walk to our small kitchen in my pajamas, and brew strong coffee while the rest of the city sleeps. I pull on my scrubs, navy blue, practical, worn soft from too many washes, and I leave for work before the sun comes up. My shifts are 12 hours long. 12 hours of running codes, lifting patients, charting vitals, holding the hands of people who are dying while their families sob in waiting rooms. I come home exhausted. My feet ache. My back is stiff. My hands smell like antiseptic no matter how many times I wash them. I never complain about it. This job pays our rent. It keeps the lights on in our 2-bedroom apartment. It puts food in the fridge and keeps my 15-year-old son Finn in decent clothes and school supplies. My husband Wyatt works in sales at a logistics company, mid-tier, nothing special. He's got charm though. The kind of easy, slick charm that makes people trust him right away. Smooth voice. Quick smile. Always knows exactly what to say to make a client feel important. He talks constantly about promotions that never come, about deals that are always just about to close, about how next quarter is going to be the big one. I learned a long time ago to just nod and smile while I handle the checkbook and make sure the bills get paid on time. Our apartment is small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen so narrow that 2 people can barely stand in it at the same time. It feels crowded with 4 of us living there. Me, Wyatt, Finn, and Wyatt's 19-year-old daughter Morgan, who's been home from community college for the summer. Morgan has her father's confidence but none of the charm. She's loud. Opinionated. Always on her phone, always scrolling, always recording videos or taking selfies. She has a way of reminding me in small cutting ways that I'm not her real mother. Never directly. Just little comments here and there. Little looks that say exactly what she's thinking. For a while we had a routine that almost felt normal. Sunday mornings we'd do meal prep together. All 4 of us crowded into that tiny kitchen, chopping vegetables, portioning out chicken breasts into plastic containers for the week ahead. Wyatt would talk about work, complain about difficult clients, incompetent coworkers, unfair managers. Morgan would scroll through her phone, occasionally glancing up to show us some video or add a sarcastic comment. Finn would help quietly, keeping his head down, trying not to get in anyone's way. I'd chop and measure and pack, keeping everything organized, keeping the peace. Weeknights we'd stream shows together. Wyatt always picked what we watched. We'd sit on the couch, me on one end, Wyatt on the other, Finn squeezed in the middle. Morgan would sprawl in the armchair with her phone in her lap, half watching, half scrolling. We'd share a bowl of popcorn. Make occasional comments about the plot. It wasn't passionate. It wasn't exciting. There were no deep conversations, no shared dreams, no moments where I looked at Wyatt and felt butterflies or connection or anything beyond mild companionship. But it was stable. Predictable. Safe. I convinced myself that was enough. I told myself blended families take work. Teenagers are difficult. Marriages go through seasons. This was just a quiet season. A stable season. Things would get better. Except about 8 months ago I started noticing things that didn't add up. It began with Wyatt's phone. He started angling the screen away from me whenever I walked past. Just a slight tilt, nothing dramatic, but enough that I couldn't see what he was looking at. Then he started keeping it face down on the counter, always on silent. He'd wake up before me in the mornings and I'd hear him in the bathroom typing quickly, deleting messages. When I asked who he was texting so early, he'd say it was work stuff. Client emails. Nothing important. Then came the late meetings. 2, sometimes 3 nights a week, he'd text me around 6 saying he had to stay late for a client pitch or a strategy session. He'd come home after 9 or 10, smelling faintly of perfume I didn't recognize. Expensive. Definitely not the cheap body spray I bought from the drugstore. He'd head straight for the shower even though he'd already showered that morning. When I asked how the meeting went, he'd give me vague, distracted answers. Fine. You know how clients are. Demanding. Morgan's behavior changed too. She started smirking when Wyatt left for these late meetings, like she knew something I didn't. She'd glance at me, then at her phone, then back at me, waiting for a reaction. I never gave her one. I just kept doing the dishes, folding the laundry, getting ready for my next shift. But I noticed. I always noticed. Dinner conversations became painfully one-sided. I tried to talk about my day, the patient who coded twice and somehow survived, the family member who screamed at me because we couldn't save their father, the bone-deep exhaustion that never really went away. Wyatt would scroll through his phone, making distracted, aha sounds. Finn would eat quietly, eyes down, sensing the tension but not knowing what to do about it. Morgan would laugh at something on her screen, completely disconnected from the rest of us. One night I tried to make a joke about it. Wyatt was on his phone again, smiling at something, and I said lightly, "What are you doing over there, running a secret spy operation?" I expected him to laugh it off. Instead, he looked up sharply, his expression hard, and snapped, "You're always looking for problems that don't exist, Addison." The sharpness in his voice startled me. Finn froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. Morgan looked up from her phone, suddenly interested, like she could smell conflict brewing. I didn't respond. I just stood up, cleared my plate, and went to bed early that night. That's when I started keeping track. Not in writing, nothing he could find. Just mental notes. Dates. Times. Patterns. I'm a nurse. I've spent years in an emergency room watching people ignore warning signs until it was too late. I've held the hands of women with broken ribs and black eyes who swore they just fell down the stairs. I've listened to them make excuses for men who'd put them in hospital beds. I've watched them walk back out the door into the same dangerous situations, convincing themselves it would get better, that they were overreacting, that love meant giving endless second chances. I swore I would never be one of those women. So when my gut started screaming that something was wrong, I didn't ignore it. I didn't tell myself I was being paranoid or insecure or controlling. But I also didn't explode. I didn't accuse. I didn't make a scene. I watched. I documented. I waited. I noticed that Wyatt's late meetings always fell on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I noticed that Morgan got overly cheerful on those nights, making cryptic comments like, "Dad works so hard, doesn't he?" while watching me carefully for a reaction. I noticed that Finn had started spending more and more time in his room with his headphones on, avoiding the growing tension in our apartment. I told myself I was being smart. Prepared. And then 2 days before that breakfast conversation, I found the hotel receipt in Wyatt's jacket pocket. I wasn't snooping. I was checking pockets before doing laundry, something I'd done 100 times before. But there was. Hotel room. Mount Pleasant. Tuesday night. The same Tuesday he'd told me he was working late on an urgent client pitch. I stood there in the dim morning light holding that crumpled receipt and felt something shift inside me. Something cold and final and perfectly clear. I didn't confront him. I folded the receipt carefully and put it back exactly where I'd found it. Then I finished the laundry, went to work, ran my shift, and came home like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I knew the truth now. And I was ready to act on it. So when Wyatt sat down across from me 2 mornings later and told me he was moving in with his ex-wife for a month, when Morgan stood there with her phone pointed at me waiting for me to fall apart, I didn't give them the reaction they wanted. I gave them exactly what they asked for. I set my spoon down on the table. The sound of it hitting the bowl seemed louder than it should have been in the sudden silence. Wyatt sat across from me, cologne still hanging heavy in the air between us, waiting for my response. Morgan stood frozen by the counter, phone lowered slightly, like she'd been expecting fireworks and couldn't quite process the calm. Finn looked between us, headphones dangling around his neck, confusion written all over his young face. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, I said, keeping my voice level and measured. You're planning to move in with your ex-wife for a month, and you think telling me in advance makes it acceptable? Wyatt nodded, completely serious. I'm being transparent, Addison. Isn't that what you always say you want? Honesty. I felt that strange calm settle deeper into my bones. The same calm that comes over me in the emergency room when a patient is coding and there's no time for panic, only action. Every move calculated. Every decision clear. Transparency is important, I said quietly. I appreciate it. But if you walk out that door, you're not taking any part of what I've built with you. His expression shifted slightly. Less confident now. What's that supposed to mean? It means if you go under a formal 30-day separation agreement. Legal signed binding. No financial support from me during that month. No access to joint accounts. You want to live like you're single, you'll fund it like you're single. The kitchen went dead silent. Morgan's mouth actually fell open slightly. Wyatt blinked like he was waiting for the punchline, waiting for me to smile and say I was kidding. You can't be serious, he finally said. Completely serious. Morgan recovered first, her voice sharp with indignation. That's insane. You're trying to control him. This is exactly why he needs space from you. I turned my head slowly to look at her. No, Morgan. This is called protecting myself. Something you'll understand one day when you're old enough to earn what you have instead of having everything handed to you. Her face flushed red. You can't talk to me like that. I just did. Wyatt stood up abruptly, rattling the table. Coffee sloshed in my cup. You can't just cut me off financially because you're upset, Addison. That's not how marriage works. You're the one leaving the marriage, Wyatt, I said, still sitting, still calm. I'm just making sure the boundaries are clear. He stared at me, jaw working like he was trying to find the right words to make me back down. When he couldn't find them, he laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. You're bluffing. You won't actually do this. I stood up, picked up my bowl, walked it to the sink and rinsed it carefully. Then I turned around and looked him directly in the eye. Try me. Something in my voice must have registered because he went quiet. Morgan was typing furiously on her phone now, probably texting someone about what a terrible person I was. Finn sat completely still, watching everything like he was trying to make himself invisible. Wyatt cleared his throat, straightened his shoulders, trying to regain control of the situation. Fine. Draw up whatever you want. I'm not going to fight you on some piece of paper. But you're making a huge mistake, Addison. When you calm down and realize how ridiculous you're being, don't expect me to just forget this. I'll keep that in mind, I said. He grabbed his phone off the counter and walked toward the bedroom. Morgan followed him, shooting me a look that was pure venom. I heard them talking in low, urgent voices behind the closed door. Probably strategizing. Probably convinced I'd cave within 24 hours. Finn stayed at the counter, staring down at his uneaten cereal. When he finally looked up at me, his eyes were watery but he wasn't crying. Mom, what's happening? I walked over and sat on the stool next to him. Your stepdad made a choice. I'm making sure I'm protected. That's all. Is he really leaving? Looks that way. Because of her? He didn't say Lacey's name, but we both knew who he meant. Yeah, buddy. Because of her. He nodded slowly, processing. Are you okay? That question broke something small inside me, but I didn't let it show. I put my hand over his. I will be. We both will be. He nodded again, then put his headphones back on and went to his room. I heard the door close softly. I stood alone in the kitchen, the morning sun starting to stream through the window, and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady as I scrolled through my contacts and found the number I needed. David Marks. Attorney. I'd worked with him on a patient advocacy case about a year ago. A woman whose husband had tried to make medical decisions against her wishes. David had been sharp, efficient, no nonsense. Exactly what I needed now. I texted him. Need a separation agreement drafted today. Can you meet this afternoon? His response came within 2 minutes. 2 p.m. My office. Bring timeline and any relevant details. I typed back, I'll be there. Then I opened a new note on my phone and started writing. Every date I could remember. Every late meeting. Every time Wyatt had come home smelling like perfume. Every smirk from Morgan. Every lie about client pitches and strategy sessions. I wrote it all down in clear, simple bullet points. By the time I finished, I had 2 full pages of documentation spanning 8 months. About an hour later, Wyatt emerged from the bedroom with a duffel bag. Morgan was right behind him, her own bag slung over her shoulder. I was sitting at the table with a cup of tea, scrolling through my phone, looking completely unbothered. "I'll be back for the rest of my stuff later," Wyatt said, not quite looking at me. "Fine. And we'll talk about this separation thing when I get back. You'll see how unnecessary it is." I didn't respond. Just took another sip of tea. Morgan stopped in the doorway, turned back and said with a smirk, "You know, Addison, Dad's being really decent about this. Most women wouldn't even get told. You should actually be grateful." I looked up at her slowly. "You might want to pay attention to what happens next, Morgan. Consider it a life lesson." She rolled her eyes. "Whatever." Then she pulled out her phone, angled it to get both her and Wyatt in the frame, and snapped a selfie. I watched her type a caption, probably something about real family sticking together. She hit post and looked at me like she'd won something. They left without saying goodbye to Finn. I heard Wyatt's car start in the parking lot, heard them drive away, and then the apartment was quiet. I sat there for another minute, finishing my tea, then I stood up and got ready for my meeting with David. At exactly 2 p.m. I walked into his office. It was small, practical, lined with law books and filing cabinets. David sat behind his desk, mid-50s, graying hair, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up when I came in and gestured to the chair across from him. "Addison. Good to see you, though I wish it was under better circumstances." "Me too. Tell me what's going on." I laid it all out. The affair. The hotel receipt. The announcement this morning. Wyatt's twisted logic about honesty. Morgan's involvement and cruelty. My need to protect myself financially and legally. David listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, he sat back and studied me for a moment. "You want a clean separation agreement. 30 days. No financial commingling during that period." "Exactly. And you want it airtight so he can't claim you abandoned him or acted in bad faith." "Yes." He nodded slowly. "I can have this drafted by end of day. You'll have exclusive possession of the apartment. No removal of property without written consent. Vehicles titled in your name stay with you. Joint accounts frozen. Each party responsible for their own expenses." "Perfect. Addison, I need to ask, are you sure about this? Once he signs, once you start enforcing these terms, there's no going back. This becomes the foundation for a divorce filing." I looked him straight in the eye. "I'm sure." He nodded once, pulled his laptop closer and started typing. "Then let's get this done." By 4:30, I had a printed, notarized separation agreement in a folder. Clean, clear, legally binding. I drove home, walked into the empty apartment and set the folder on the kitchen table. Then I texted Wyatt, "Agreement is ready. Come sign it whenever you want to pick up your things." His response came an hour later. "You're really doing this?" I typed back, "You said you weren't going to fight me on it." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "Fine. I'll come by tomorrow morning." I set my phone down and looked around the apartment. It felt different already. Lighter somehow. Like something heavy had been lifted off the walls. I made dinner for Finn and me. We ate quietly, then watched a movie together on the couch. He didn't ask questions. Just sat close to me and I put my arm around his shoulders. That night I slept better than I had in months. And the next morning, when Wyatt showed up to sign the papers he hadn't bothered to read, I knew exactly what was coming next. Wyatt showed up the next morning at 9:30, right when he said he would. I heard his key turn in the lock, then stop. He tried it again. Nothing. I watched through the peephole as confusion crossed his face, then irritation. He knocked. 3 sharp raps. I opened the door, holding the folder with the separation agreement inside. "Locks changed already?" he asked, trying to sound amused but not quite pulling it off. "Safety precaution," I said. "The agreement's right here. You can read it in the living room if you want." He stepped inside, looking around like he expected something to be different. Everything looked exactly the same. Same couch, same coffee table, same framed photo of Finn from last year's school picture on the side table. Wyatt picked up the folder, flipped it open and scanned the first page. "This is excessive, Addison. It's protective." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "You actually got a lawyer to draft this?" How much did that cost? My money. My decision. He shook his head, flipping through the pages without really reading them. I could tell by how fast his eyes moved. He wasn't absorbing a single word. Just performing the action of reading so he could say he'd looked at it. Morgan appeared in the doorway then, phone already in her hand. She must have been waiting in the car. Is this going to take long? Mom's expecting us. Wyatt waved her off. Give me a minute. She rolled her eyes but stayed in the doorway, phone angled toward us. Recording probably. Or at least ready to. Wyatt sat down on the couch, pulled a pen from his pocket and started signing. Bottom of page 1. Page 2. Page 3. He didn't ask a single question. Didn't pause to read any clauses about financial separation or property rights or the 30-day timeline. Just signed his name in quick, careless strokes like he was signing a receipt at a restaurant. When he finished, he tossed the folder onto the coffee table and stood up. Happy now? Very, I said. He stared at me for a moment like he was waiting for something. Tears maybe. Bigger. Some kind of emotional reaction that would prove I was falling apart without him. When I didn't give him anything, he shook his head. You'll regret this, he said quietly. When you calm down and realize how irrational you're being, don't expect me to just forget it. Noted, I said. Morgan stepped further into the room, filming openly now. This is honestly sad, Addison. You're punishing Dad for being honest with you. That's toxic. I looked directly at her, directly at the camera. Everything in that agreement is legal and fair. Your father signed it willingly. If there's a problem with it later, that's on him for not reading what he signed. She lowered the phone slightly, caught off guard by how calm I sounded. Wyatt grabbed his duffel bag from where he'd left it by the door the night before. I'll be back for the rest of my things in a few days. You'll need to schedule that with me in writing, I said. Per the agreement. He stopped, turned back. You're serious? Completely. He muttered something under his breath, then walked out. Morgan followed, but not before turning back to say, You're going to be so lonely. I closed the door behind them, locked it and leaned against it for just a moment. Then I picked up the signed agreement, scanned every page and emailed copies to David and to myself. Binding. Done. The next 48 hours moved like a carefully choreographed operation. First the car. Wyatt had been driving a sedan that was titled solely in my name. I'd bought it 2 years ago when his previous car died, put the title in my name because his credit was a mess, and he'd been making promises about paying me back ever since. Promises that never materialized. I called the lender, explained the situation, provided proof of ownership and the separation agreement, and authorized them to repossess the vehicle. They found it parked outside Lacey's townhouse in Mount Pleasant and towed it that same afternoon. Next, the bank. I took a personal day from work and went to our credit union first thing in the morning. The teller recognized me. I'd been banking there for 6 years. I showed her the separation agreement and asked to close the joint checking account. She walked me through the process, professional and efficient. I withdrew everything except exactly $200, which I transferred into a new account under Wyatt's name alone. That way he couldn't claim I'd left him with nothing, couldn't accuse me of financial abandonment. The remaining funds, just over $4,000 that I'd deposited from my own paychecks over the past few months, went into my private account. Then I called our cell phone carrier. Wyatt's line was under my family plan, something I'd set up years ago to save money. I explained that I needed to remove a line due to separation, provided my account information, and had his service disconnected within 10 minutes. Clean. Simple. Legal. Back at the apartment, I called a locksmith. He arrived within an hour, changed both locks and gave me 3 new keys. I kept 2 and gave 1 to Finn. Then I logged into our building's security system and updated the access codes for the front entrance and the parking garage. Every action was documented. Every step was legal. Every decision was irreversible. That evening I met with David again. He'd already started drafting the divorce complaint. You're moving fast, he observed, not disapprovingly. No reason to wait, I said. Fault-based grounds. Adultery. You're sure you want to go that route? It can get messy. I have evidence. He raised an eyebrow. How much evidence? Enough. I didn't tell him about Sienna yet. That card I'd play when I needed it. David nodded slowly. Hey. I'll file within the week. He'll be served at the address you provided. Lacey's townhouse in Mount Pleasant. Got it. He made a note. Addison, you should prepare yourself. Once he's served, once he realizes you're serious, things might get ugly. He might show up. He might make threats. I'm prepared. He studied me for a moment. Yeah. I believe you are. I left his office as the sun was setting, drove home through evening traffic and felt nothing but clarity. When I got home, Finn was making himself a sandwich in the kitchen. He looked up when I came in. Hey, Mom. Hey, buddy. How was your day? Fine. Quiet. He paused, then asked carefully, Is Wyatt coming back? Not to live here, no. He nodded, processing that. Good. That one word surprised me. Good. Yeah. He took a bite of his sandwich, chewed, swallowed. He wasn't. I don't know. He wasn't nice to you. I noticed. Something in my chest tightened. You don't have to worry about that anymore. I know. He gave me a small smile. You're handling it. I am. He went back to his room and I stood alone in the kitchen, feeling that same sense of lightness I'd felt the night before. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even realize was there until it was gone. 3 days later, the final piece fell into place. My phone buzzed with an email from Sienna Vaughn. Subject line: Final documentation package. I opened it on my laptop. The attachment was a compressed file containing dozens of photos, time-stamped and geotagged. Wyatt and Lacey at a wine bar on Meeting Street. At a hotel parking lot near the Ashley River. Sitting together in her car outside a restaurant. And the one that mattered most. Wyatt's car, the one I'd since had repossessed, parked outside Lacey's townhouse at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Timestamp showed he didn't leave until 3 a.m. There were also screenshots. Text messages between Wyatt and Lacey. Nothing explicit but enough. Can't wait to see you tonight. She doesn't suspect anything. This is worth the risk. And then the messages that made my stomach turn. A group chat. Wyatt, Lacey and Morgan. Morgan sending updates. She just left for work. You're clear. She's working a double tomorrow. You'll have all day. And the one that hurt most, even though I'd been expecting it, she's so clueless. This is almost too easy. Morgan wasn't just aware. She was coordinating. She was facilitating. She was enjoying it. I saved everything to 3 separate flash drives. Uploaded copies to a secure cloud account with password protection. Then I forwarded the entire packet to David with a simple message. Evidence attached. Use as needed. His response came within minutes. This is more than enough. Filing tomorrow. I closed my laptop and sat in the quiet apartment. No anger. No tears. Just the grim satisfaction of being right. Of being prepared. Of having made the right choice. That night I slept deeply and dreamlessly. And when Wyatt's first frantic voicemail came 2 days later, his voice panicked, confused, demanding to know what I'd done to the bank accounts, I listened to it once, saved it as evidence and deleted it. Then I blocked his number and went back to work. The first call came on day 4. I was at work, in the middle of starting in 4 on a patient in bed 3, when my phone buzzed in my scrubs pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. By the time I finished with the patient and checked my phone, I had 7 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I waited until my break, went to the staff lounge, poured myself burnt coffee from the pot that had been sitting there since morning shift, and listened to the voicemails. The first one was Wyatt. His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the edge underneath. Addison, my card got declined at the gas station. I need you to call me back. This is ridiculous. The second one, an hour later, less controlled. Addison, what did you do to the accounts? My card's being declined everywhere. Call me back. Now. The third one, Morgan's voice, sharp and nasty. You're pathetic, Addison. You think cutting off his money makes you look strong? You're just proving why he left. Grow up. I saved each voicemail, added the numbers to my blocked list and went back to work. The calls kept coming from new numbers. Wyatt must have been borrowing phones. Lacey's, Morgan's, maybe random people at whatever store he was trying to buy something at. Each message grew more frantic, more desperate, more angry. You can't just cut me off. I have bills. This is illegal. You're committing financial abuse. I talked to someone and they said, this is insane. You're insane. I listened to each one once, saved them all to a folder on my phone labeled Evidence, and blocked every new number. After the 10th call, I sent one text to the most recent number. You asked for separation. This is what you signed. See you in court. Then I blocked that number too and turned off notifications. At home that evening, Finn was doing homework at the kitchen table when I walked in. He looked up, saw my face, and asked quietly, "Wyatt?" "Yeah." "He keeps calling?" "Not anymore." Finn nodded and went back to his math problems. The kid was 15 but sometimes felt older than that. He'd been watching everything, taking it all in, saying nothing. I appreciated that more than I could tell him. By day 6, Morgan took the battle public. A coworker pulled me aside during shift change. Rachel, one of the ICU nurses I'd worked with for 3 years. She looked uncomfortable. "Hey, I saw something on Instagram. Is everything okay?" I kept my face neutral. "What did you see?" She pulled out her phone, opened the app and showed me Morgan's account. A video of her sitting in what looked like Lacey's living room, eyes red, makeup smudged, talking directly to the camera. "Some people show you who they really are when things get hard," she was saying, voice shaking with manufactured emotion. "My dad was just trying to be honest, trying to communicate, and his wife punished him for it. She took everything. Cut him off. Left him with nothing. And for what? Because he needed space. Because he was going through something." The comment section was flooded. Heart emojis. Crying faces. "You're so strong. Some people are just cruel. Your dad deserves better." I handed the phone back to Rachel. "It's handled. Are you sure? Because if you need." "I'm sure. But thanks." She squeezed my arm and let it drop. Over the next few days, Morgan posted more Instagram stories with captions like, "When someone shows their true colors," over a black screen. Selfies with Wyatt, both of them looking sad and wounded, captioned, "Real family sticks together." A video of her crying, actual tears this time, or at least convincing ones, talking about how I'd destroyed their family, how I was controlling and manipulative, how all her dad wanted was honesty and communication. Her friends ate it up. The comments filled with support for her, condemnation for me. A few people I vaguely knew from Wyatt's work circles even chimed in, calling me heartless, a gold digger, a narcissist. I didn't respond. Didn't comment. Didn't even look at the posts after that first one Rachel showed me. Let her perform for her audience. Let her paint me as the villain. The truth had a way of coming out eventually, and when it did, no amount of crying videos would save her. 2 of my other coworkers asked me about it over the next week. Both times I said the same thing: "It's being handled legally. I'm fine." And both times they nodded and dropped it. Day 11. 10 p.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table charting patient notes, documentation I'd brought home because I'd been too busy during my shift to finish it. Finn was in his room with his door closed, music playing softly. The apartment was quiet, peaceful. Then someone started pounding on the door. Not knocking. Pounding. Fist against wood, hard enough to rattle the frame. "Addison." Wyatt's voice, loud and angry, echoing in the hallway. "Open this door." I froze for half a second, then stood up slowly. Walked to the door. Looked through the peephole. Wyatt's face was red, twisted with rage. His fist came down on the door again. Bang. 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 "You have no legal right to lock me out of my own home. Open this door right now." I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, and started recording through the peephole. His face filled the frame, distorted by the fisheye lens. Spit flying as he yelled. Fist hammering. "I know you're in there, Addison. You can't hide from me. You think you can just steal everything and get away with it." Down the hall, I saw Mrs. Chin from 4C peek her head out of her apartment, eyes wide. Mr. Okafor from 4A opened his door halfway, phone already in his hand. I kept recording and called building security with my other hand. "This is Addison Hayes in 4B. There's a man pounding on my door, yelling, refusing to leave. I need security up here now." The dispatcher said they were on their way. Wyatt kept pounding. "This is abuse. Financial abuse. You can't just cut me off and lock me out. I have rights." "Sir, you need to calm down." Mr. Okafor's voice, firm and clear. "You're disturbing the whole floor." Wyatt whipped around. "Mind your own business." "You're making it everyone's business," Mr. Okafor said calmly. 2 security guards appeared at the end of the hallway, walking fast. I stopped recording and stayed by the door listening. "Sir, you need to leave the property." The first guard, a broad-shouldered guy I'd seen around the building. "This is my apartment. Do you have a key?" "No, but..." "Do you have legal documentation saying you're allowed to be here?" "She changed the locks illegally." "Sir, if you don't leave right now, we're calling the police." Silence. Then Wyatt's voice, lower but still shaking with anger. "This isn't over. Leave. Now." I heard footsteps. Retreating. The elevator ding. Then quiet. A knock on my door, gentle this time. "Miss Hayes?" "It's building security." "He's gone." I opened the door. The two guards stood there, professional and calm. "You okay?" the first one asked. "I'm fine. Thank you. We're going to file an incident report. If he comes back, call us immediately. If he tries this again, we'll involve the police." "I appreciate that." The second guard handed me a printed form. "Fill this out and drop it off at the front desk tomorrow. We'll keep it on file." I thanked them again. They left. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for a moment. Finn's door opened. He stood there in his pajamas, face pale. "Was that Wyatt?" "Yeah." "Is he gone?" "Yeah, buddy. Security took care of it." He nodded, processing. "Good." I walked over, put my hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" "Are you?" "I am." He hugged me quickly, then went back to his room. I heard his door close, heard his music start up again. I went back to the kitchen table, forwarded the video to David along with a message. "Incident at my apartment tonight. Security involved. Report attached tomorrow." His response came 5 minutes later. "Good documentation. This strengthens your case significantly." I set my phone down and finished my charting. The next evening, Finn came into the kitchen while I was chopping vegetables for stir-fry. He sat at the table watching me for a moment before speaking. "Mom, I know what's happening." I looked at him. Waited. "I know Wyatt cheated on you. I know Morgan was helping him. And I know you're protecting us." His voice didn't shake. He wasn't asking for reassurance or permission to feel a certain way. He was just stating facts, the way I'd taught him to approach problems. Calmly, clearly, without unnecessary emotion. "Yeah, buddy," I said quietly. "That's exactly what's happening." He nodded. "I'm glad you're doing something about it. I was worried you'd just let it happen." That hit me harder than I expected. "You were worried?" "Yeah. I've seen you let him get away with stuff before. Little stuff. But it added up." I set the knife down. "I'm not letting anything slide anymore." "I know." He stood up, walked over and hugged me. Brief but solid. Then he pulled back and said, "I'm proud of you, Mom." I felt something crack open in my chest. Not breaking. Opening. Letting light in. "Thanks, Finn." He nodded once, grabbed an apple from the counter and went back to his room. I stood there in the kitchen, knife in hand, vegetables half chopped, and let myself feel it. The weight of doing the right thing. The cost of protecting what mattered. The quiet, steady knowledge that I wasn't alone in this. Then I finished making dinner and we ate together in comfortable silence. The following week I scheduled the movers. I'd been planning this since the day Wyatt signed the separation agreement. My grandmother's mahogany dining set, the one she'd left me in her will, the one I'd refinished myself over 3 weekends before Wyatt and I even met. The bedroom furniture I'd saved for 2 years to buy, back when I was still in my first apartment after nursing school. My home office desk and chair, the filing cabinet, the bookshelf I'd assembled alone because Wyatt said he didn't have time. All of it mine. Purchased before the marriage. Documented with receipts I'd kept in a folder for exactly this reason. I called a moving company, explained the situation and asked for their earliest available slot. They said Thursday at 8 a.m. I gave them a detailed inventory list, attached scanned copies of every receipt, and confirmed twice that they understood this might get confrontational. The manager, a woman named Paula with a no-nonsense voice, said, "We've handled worse. Just make sure you're there to authorize everything." Thursday morning I woke up early. Made coffee. Dressed in jeans and a plain t-shirt. Finn was still asleep. I told him to stay in his room no matter what he heard. At 7:45 I went down to the parking lot and waited. The moving truck pulled in at 8 on the dot. 2 men got out. One older, heavy-set with gray hair and steady hands, the other younger, lean, moving with efficient purpose. The older one introduced himself as Joe. "Miss Hayes." "That's me. We've got your list." Shouldn't take more than 2 hours if everything goes smoothly. It might not go smoothly, I said. My husband might show up. He signed a separation agreement, but he's been difficult. Joe nodded like he'd heard it all before. We'll handle it. You just point us to what goes and what stays. I let them into the apartment. Showed them the dining set, the bedroom furniture, the office setup. They worked quickly, wrapping everything in blankets, using dollies to move the heavier pieces. I stood on the balcony watching them load the truck, feeling strangely calm. That's when I heard the car. Tires screeching into the parking lot. Engine revving too loud. I looked down and saw Wyatt's car. The one I'd had repossessed had apparently been replaced, probably by Lacey, skid into a spot near the truck. He jumped out before the engine even stopped. Morgan was right behind him, phone already in her hand, recording. What the hell do you think you're doing? Wyatt's voice carried across the parking lot, sharp and furious. The movers paused. Joe looked up at me. I stayed where I was, arms folded, and said nothing. Wyatt stormed toward the truck. That's my furniture. You can't just take it. Joe stepped between Wyatt and the truck, calm and unmovable. Sir, we have documentation showing Ms. Hayes purchased these items before the marriage. We're operating legally. I don't care what you think you have. That's theft. Morgan rushed forward, phone held high, filming everything. You can't just take our stuff. This is robbery. We're calling the police. Go ahead, I called down from the balcony. My voice cut through the noise, clear and cold. Call them. I have receipts for every single item being removed. The separation agreement Wyatt signed gives me exclusive rights to property I owned before the marriage. Everything here is mine. Wyatt's face went red. You're insane. You can't do this. I already am. He moved toward the truck like he was going to physically stop them from loading the next piece. My grandmother's china cabinet. Joe stepped in front of him again, this time with his hand raised. Sir, you need to step back. That's my house. My furniture. It's not, I said louder now. It's my apartment. My furniture. And if you touch anything or interfere with these movers doing their legal work, I'll have you arrested. Morgan whipped around, aiming her phone at me. You're destroying this family. You're evil. By now, neighbors had started coming outside. Mrs. Chin from 4C stood on her balcony, arms crossed, watching with open curiosity. Mr. Okafor was in his doorway with his wife, both of them frowning at the scene. Mrs. Albertson from 3B, a retired schoolteacher who'd lived in the building for 15 years, stepped out onto her balcony and called down. Wyatt, you're making a fool of yourself. Leave that woman alone. Wyatt spun toward her. Stay out of this. You've been staying out at all hours for months, Mrs. Albertson said, voice sharp and clear. We all noticed. Don't come back now acting like you're the victim. Wyatt's mouth opened then closed. Morgan kept filming, panning between me and the neighbors, probably trying to capture something she could spin online. Everyone's just going to stand there and let her steal? Morgan shouted at the growing crowd. Mr. Kim, a quiet man who rarely spoke to anyone, called out from his doorway. It's not stealing if it's hers. Morgan's face flushed. He turned back to the movers. You're going to regret this. We're suing all of you. Joe didn't even look at her. Just kept wrapping the china cabinet, securing it with straps, nodding to his partner to help lift it onto the dolly. Wyatt tried one more time to block them, stepping directly in front of the truck. Joe sighed, pulled out his phone and dialed. Yeah, I need police assistance at the Riverside Apartments, Building 4. We've got someone interfering with a legal move. Wyatt's eyes widened. You're calling the cops on me? You're trespassing and interfering with contracted work, Joe said calmly. So yeah, that did it. Wyatt stepped back, hands up, voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Fine. Take it. Take everything. You're going to regret this, Addison. When you're sitting alone in that empty apartment with nobody, you'll realize what you threw away. I looked down at him, meeting his eyes. I already know what I threw away. And I'm better off without it. Morgan let out a bitter laugh. You're going to be so lonely. Mrs. Chun called down from her balcony. She's got her son. He's got her job. She's got more than you think. Morgan turned, filming Mrs. Chun now. Oh, so everyone's just against us? You made it easy, Mrs. Chun said and went back inside. The movers finished loading. Joe handed me a clipboard with the inventory list. I signed it, confirmed the delivery address for my storage unit, and thanked them. You handled that well, Joe said quietly. Seen a lot of ugly divorces. You kept your cool. Learned it at work, I said. He nodded, climbed into the truck, and drove away. Wyatt and Morgan stood in the parking lot watching the truck disappear. A few neighbors were still outside watching them. Nobody said anything, but the judgment was clear in their silence. Wyatt turned to look up at me one last time. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I said. Then I went inside and closed the balcony door. I stood in the apartment looking around. It was emptier now. The dining table was gone, leaving a bare spot on the floor where the rug had protected the wood. The bedroom looked strange without the furniture I'd brought into the marriage. My office was stripped down to the walls. But it didn't feel empty. It felt clean. I made myself a cup of tea, carried it out to the balcony, and sat down. The morning sun was warm on my face. The parking lot below was quiet again, neighbors gone back inside, drama over. I waited for the sadness to come. For regret or doubt or some kind of emotional collapse now that the confrontation was done. It never came. Instead, I felt light. Free. Like I'd been holding my breath underwater for months, years maybe, and had finally surfaced. My lungs filled with clean air. My shoulders dropped. The tension I'd been carrying since the morning Wyatt announced he was leaving, maybe even since long before that, finally released. I thought about the women I'd seen in the year. The ones with broken bones and broken spirits who kept going back. The ones who made excuses, who believed the promises, who convinced themselves they couldn't survive alone. I'd held their hands. I'd documented their injuries. I'd watched them walk back out into the same dangerous situations, and I'd felt helpless every single time. I'd sworn I would never be one of them. And I wasn't. I finished my tea, washed the cup, and went to check on Finn. He was awake, sitting on his bed with his headphones on, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I opened the door. Is it done? It's done. Wyatt showed up? Yeah. Made a scene. Neighbors saw the whole thing. Finn nodded slowly. Good. Now everyone knows. I hadn't thought about it that way, but he was right. Now everyone knew. The people who lived in this building, who saw me every day, who'd been watching for months, they knew the truth now. Not Morgan's version. Not Wyatt's spin. The truth. That night I slept better than I had in months. And when I woke up the next morning, the apartment still felt lighter. 3 weeks after the movers left, David called me at work. We've got a court date, he said. Judge Harmon. 2 weeks from today. 9 a.m. I was in the break room halfway through a turkey sandwich, still wearing my scrubs from the morning shift. That's fast. Judge Harmon moves quickly on cases with clear evidence. She doesn't waste time. Good. Wyatt's attorney filed a response. They're claiming the separation agreement was signed under duress and that you're being vindictive. I almost laughed. Duress. He signed it without even reading it. I know. I've got the video you took, the timeline, everything. We're solid. Just be prepared for him to try to make you look bad. I'm prepared. 2 weeks later, Finn stayed home from school. I'd arranged it with his teachers ahead of time, told them I had a family matter to handle. He didn't ask to come to the courthouse, and I didn't offer. Some things kids don't need to see. I dressed carefully that morning. Black slacks, white blouse, minimal jewelry. Professional. Comb. I pulled my hair back into a neat bun the same way I wore it at work and drove to the Charleston County Family Court building downtown. David met me outside. He was wearing a gray suit, carrying a leather briefcase, looking every bit the competent attorney he was. Ready? He asked. Ready. We walked inside together. The courthouse smelled like old wood and industrial cleaner. Our footsteps echoed on the tile floors. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor, walked down a hallway lined with wooden benches, and found courtroom 3C. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a flat, colorless glow. Wooden benches worn smooth from years of people sitting through the worst days of their lives. A South Carolina state flag hung next to the American flag behind the judge's bench. Everything felt heavy and formal and final. Wyatt was already there, sitting at the table on the left side of the room. His attorney sat next to him. A young guy, maybe late 20s, with a suit that didn't quite fit right and a nervous energy that showed in the way he kept shuffling papers. Wyatt looked thinner than I remembered. Tired. His shirt was wrinkled. He didn't look at me when I walked in. Morgan sat in the gallery behind him, arms crossed, glaring at me with pure venom. She dressed up for this. Blouse, skirt, makeup carefully applied. Playing the role of the wrong daughter. David and I sat at the table on the right. He arranged his files neatly in front of him, pulled out a legal pad and waited. At 9:05 the bailiff called out, "All rise." We stood. The judge entered from a side door. An older woman, probably mid-60s, with sharp gray eyes and silver hair pulled back in a tight bun that reminded me of the nurses I'd trained under years ago. No nonsense. Direct. She wore black robes and carried herself with the kind of authority that made the room go completely silent. "Be seated," she said, settling into her chair behind the bench. The bailiff announced the case. Hayes versus Brennan. Dissolution of marriage. Judge Harmon opened the file in front of her. She didn't rush. She read through the separation agreement first, running her finger down the pages, occasionally making notes in the margin. Then she moved to Sienna's documentation packet. The photos, the timestamps, the text messages. Then the security incident report from the night Wyatt showed up pounding on my door. Then the text message records David had submitted. The silence stretched. Wyatt shifted in his seat. His attorney kept glancing at him, then at the judge, then back at his notes. Morgan leaned forward, phone in her lap, probably wanting to record but not quite bold enough to try it in a courtroom. Finally, Judge Harmon looked up. She removed her reading glasses and set them on the bench. "Mr. Brennan," she said, her voice clear and direct. "Stand up, please." Wyatt stood. His attorney stood with him. "I've reviewed the evidence submitted by both parties," the judge continued. "And I want to be very clear about what I see here. This is textbook adultery with clear documentary evidence. You signed a separation agreement on," she glanced down, "the 16th of last month that explicitly outlined financial and property terms. You signed it willingly, without coercion, in the presence of your daughter who can verify you were not under duress." Wyatt opened his mouth. His attorney put a hand on his arm. Judge Harmon wasn't finished. "You then violated the marital contract through documented infidelity. I have photographs, text messages, and third-party testimony confirming an ongoing affair with your ex-wife. You also showed up at Ms. Hayes's residence in violation of the separation agreement, creating a disturbance that required security intervention." She paused, letting each word land with weight. "Ms. Hayes is granted the divorce. You forfeit all claims to spousal support and any joint property acquired during the marriage. The separation agreement you signed is incorporated into this final order. The terms are binding and enforceable. Do you understand?" Wyatt's face had gone pale. "Your Honor, Do you understand, Mr. Brennan?" His attorney whispered something. Wyatt swallowed hard. "Yes." "Good. We're done here." Judge Harmon banged her gavel once. Final. The sound echoed in the small courtroom. "Court is adjourned." She stood, gathered her files, and disappeared through the side door. For a moment nobody moved. Then Wyatt sank back into his chair, staring at the table in front of him like he couldn't quite process what had just happened. His attorney packed up his briefcase quickly, murmured something about filing options and left. David turned to me. "That's it. You're divorced. Clean break. Everything you wanted." I nodded. I felt calm. Like a chapter had closed and I could finally move forward without looking back. Wyatt was still sitting at his table when I walked past. I didn't stop. Didn't say anything. Just kept walking. Morgan caught up to me in the hallway outside the courtroom. "You happy now?" she hissed. "You destroyed him." I stopped, turned to face her. "I didn't destroy him, Morgan. He destroyed himself. I just stopped cleaning up the mess." She opened her mouth to respond, but I was already walking away. David and I took the elevator down in silence. Outside, the morning sun was bright and warm. Charleston in late spring, everything green and alive. In the parking lot, Wyatt appeared again. I was unlocking my car when I heard his footsteps behind me. "Addison." I turned. He looked smaller somehow. Deflated. "You think you've won?" His voice was shaking, but not with anger this time. With something closer to desperation. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in weeks. And I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No regret. Just a distant, clinical observation of a man I used to know. It's been over since you walked out that door, Wyatt, I said quietly. You just didn't realize it yet. He stared at me, mouth opening and closing like he was trying to find words that wouldn't come. I got in my car, started the engine and pulled out of the parking space. In my rearview mirror I saw him standing there alone, hands in his pockets, watching me drive away. He got smaller and smaller until he disappeared completely around a corner. That image stayed with me. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. I drove home, changed out of my court clothes and made myself lunch. Then I called Finn. It's done, I said when he answered. Officially. Officially. How do you feel? I thought about it. Free. He was quiet for a moment. Then, good. You deserve that. Over the next few weeks, word filtered back through mutual acquaintances. Sarah, a co-worker who'd stayed friendly with one of Wyatt's colleagues, pulled me aside one afternoon. I heard things aren't going well for Wyatt, she said carefully. I haven't been keeping track. He's living with Lacey. And Morgan. In her townhouse. I nodded, didn't say anything. Apparently it's not going well. Neighbors have complained about screaming. Police were called twice last week. That's unfortunate. Sarah studied my face. You really don't care, do you? I cared for 4 years, I said. That was enough. Another friend mentioned that Morgan had posted a long rant on social media about how hard her life had become, then deleted it an hour later. Someone else said Lacey had kicked Wyatt out once already, then let him back in after he begged. I listened to it all with the same detached interest I'd give to a patient's family drama in the ER. Sympathy for the situation but no personal investment. Their choices. Their consequences. I'd chosen differently, and I was living with the peace that choice had given me. That was enough. 2 months after the divorce finalized, I got the call I'd been waiting for. My supervisor at the hospital, Karen, asked me to come to her office after my shift. I thought maybe I'd made a mistake on some paperwork, or a patient had complained or something needed fixing. Instead, she closed the door, gestured for me to sit and smiled. We're creating a new nurse manager position for the ICU, she said. Better hours, better pay, more responsibility. I'd like to offer it to you. I sat there for a moment, processing. Me. You've been here 6 years, Addison. You're reliable, competent, and the staff respects you. It's yours if you want it. I didn't hesitate. I want it. Good. You start next month. Congratulations. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in years. The raise was significant. Enough that Finn and I could move somewhere better, somewhere that felt like a fresh start instead of a space haunted by everything that had happened. That weekend we went apartment hunting. Found a 2-bedroom in West Ashley with higher ceilings, better light, hardwood floors that didn't creak, and a small balcony overlooking a park. The rent was more than our old place, but with my new salary it was manageable. Finn stood in the empty second bedroom, sunlight streaming through the window, and said, "Can I paint it?" "What color?" "Navy blue." "Yeah, buddy. It's your room. Paint it however you want." His face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. We moved in 3 weeks later. Finn painted his room himself, rolled up his sleeves, covered the floor with tarps, and worked methodically until every wall was a deep, rich blue. He set up his desk by the window, arranged his books on the shelf, hung posters of bands and video games, and finally had a space that felt completely his. I took my time with my own room. Bought new bedding, soft gray sheets, a thick comforter, pillows that actually supported my neck after long shifts. Hung curtains that blocked out the morning light so I could sleep in on my days off. Set up a small reading chair in the corner with a lamp and a side table for my coffee. Within weeks I started noticing changes in Finn. Small things at first. He smiled more easily. Hummed while he did homework. Started bringing friends over after school. Something he'd stopped doing entirely during the last year of my marriage. I'd hear laughter coming from his room, the sound of teenage boys talking too loud about things that didn't matter, and I'd feel something warm settle in my chest. His grades improved. He joined the school's robotics club, something he'd mentioned wanting to do a year ago but never followed through on. Now he stayed late twice a week working on projects, came home excited, talking about motors and circuits and competitions. One evening I was making dinner when I heard him on the phone in his room. He was laughing, really laughing, the kind that comes from deep in your chest and doesn't stop. I stood in the kitchen listening and realized I hadn't heard him laugh like that in over a year. Maybe longer. The weight we'd both been carrying was finally gone. Around the same time, word started filtering back about Wyatt. It came in pieces, through different people like a puzzle assembling itself without me asking for it. Sarah from work mentioned she'd heard things weren't going well. Another nurse, Beth, said her neighbor lived near Lacey's townhouse and had complained about noise. A former co-worker of Wyatt's ran into me at the grocery store and said, awkwardly, that he'd heard Wyatt was going through a rough patch. I nodded politely each time, didn't ask for details, didn't engage. But the information kept coming anyway. Then about 3 months after the divorce, Rachel sent me a link. Have you seen this? She texted. You might want to. I was sitting on my balcony, coffee in hand, enjoying a rare quiet morning. I clicked the link. Facebook. Wyatt's profile. A video titled, Speaking My Truth. I almost didn't watch it. Almost deleted the message and went back to my coffee. But curiosity got the better of me. The video started with Wyatt sitting in what I recognized as Lacey's living room. Floral couch, beige walls, cheap framed art. His eyes were red. His voice shook slightly like he was barely holding it together. I just want to be honest with people who care about me, he began. Because I've been going through something really difficult and I think it's important to share my story. He went on for another minute. Talked about how he'd tried to be transparent with me, how he'd made mistakes but owned up to them, how I'd punished him for being honest. He used words like controlling, financially abusive, vindictive. He painted himself as the victim of a cold, heartless woman who destroyed their family out of spite. The comments section was already filling up. Sympathy poured in. You're so brave for sharing this. Some people are just toxic. You deserve so much better, man. I watched about 30 seconds more, then closed the browser. Let him perform. Attention was the drug he'd been chasing his whole life, and I wasn't his supplier anymore. I finished my coffee, deleted the link from my messages, and went back to reading my book. During the marriage, I'd let so many friendships fade. Wyatt hadn't liked when I went out without him. He'd always had some comment when I made plans, questioning why I needed to see people so often, suggesting we spend the evening together instead, making me feel guilty for wanting time with friends. Eventually I'd stopped trying. Stopped texting people. Stopped making plans. Shrunk my world down to work and home and the small, suffocating space Wyatt had carved out for me. After the divorce, I started reaching out again. Tentatively at first, then with more confidence. Rachel was the first. We'd been in nursing school together, studied through endless nights fueled by coffee and stress, promised we'd stay close after graduation. Life had gotten in the way, her marriage, my marriage, work schedules that never aligned. But when I texted her, she responded immediately. Coffee this weekend? I asked. Yes. Absolutely. Saturday morning. We met at a cafe near the hospital. When I walked in, she stood up and hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. I've missed you, she said. I've missed you too. We sat for 3 hours. Talked about everything. She told me she'd wanted to say something during my marriage, had seen the way I'd changed, the way I'd stopped laughing, stopped being myself. But she hadn't known how to bring it up without pushing me away. I'm sorry I didn't say anything, she said. I wouldn't have listened, I admitted. I wasn't ready. You're ready now. Yeah. I am. We started meeting every other week. Sometimes for coffee, sometimes for lunch, sometimes just walking around downtown Charleston talking about nothing and everything. Having her back in my life felt like finding a piece of myself I'd forgotten existed. I joined a book club that met at a local library. Went to a colleague's birthday party and stayed out until midnight, dancing and laughing and remembering what it felt like to just exist without constantly monitoring someone else's mood. Reconnected with people from college, from old jobs, from different chapters of my life that I'd closed off when Wyatt decided they weren't worth my time. I remembered who I'd been before I'd made myself smaller to fit his ego. That woman was still there. Just buried. Now she was breathing again. One Saturday morning I woke up naturally. No alarm. No jolt of panic. No dread about what the day might bring. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom window, warm and soft. I lay there for a moment, just breathing, feeling the weight of the comforter, listening to the distant sounds of the park below. Kids laughing, a dog barking, someone playing music. I got up, made coffee and carried it out to the balcony. Sat in my pajamas, hair messy, no makeup, no agenda. I opened a book I'd been meaning to read for months and just existed. No one criticized how I was spending my time. No one needed anything from me in that moment. No one was keeping score. Around 10, Finn emerged from his room, still in his pajamas, hair sticking up in every direction. He made himself breakfast, eggs and toast slightly burnt but edible, and brought it out to the balcony. "Morning, Mom." "Morning, buddy." He sat down in the chair next to me, ate quietly for a minute, then said, "This is nice." "What is this?" "Just us. The apartment. Everything." I looked at him. 15 years old, growing into someone I was proud of, someone who'd survived the chaos and come out stronger. "Yeah," I said. "It is." That afternoon we went to the park. Threw a frisbee back and forth, badly laughing every time one of us missed. Got ice cream from a truck parked near the playground. Sat on a bench watching people walk by, talking about nothing important. His robotics project, a movie he wanted to see, whether we should get a dog. These small, ordinary moments became proof. Proof that I'd made the right choice. Proof that peace wasn't something you stumbled into. It was something you fought for, protected, earned. And I'd earned this. That evening I stood on the balcony watching the sun set over the park, and for the first time in years, I felt completely, entirely at peace. 4 months after the divorce, my phone rang on a Tuesday evening. I was sitting on the balcony, feet up on the railing, watching the sun sink below the trees in the park. Finn was inside doing homework, music playing softly from his room. The air was warm, carrying the smell of someone grilling nearby. I had a glass of iced tea sweating on the table beside me and a book open in my lap. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I'd gotten good at ignoring unknown numbers. They were usually spam or occasionally Wyatt calling from yet another borrowed phone that I'd block within minutes. But something made me answer this time. Maybe intuition. Maybe curiosity. "Hello." Silence on the other end. Then a breath. Then a voice I recognized but barely. "Addison." "Morgan." But not the Morgan I'd last heard. Loud, confident, dripping with contempt. This voice was small. Shaking. Stripped of every ounce of arrogance. I didn't know who else to call. I stayed silent. Waited. She took a shaky breath. "Mom kicked Dad out. For good this time. He's been staying in his car for the past week. I got fired from my job because I kept missing shifts and showing up late. And Her voice cracked. "I'm pregnant. The guy won't return my calls. He blocked me. I don't have anyone else." I looked out at the park. A couple walked by holding hands. A dog chased a tennis ball across the grass. "Please, Addison." Morgan's voice was breaking now, words coming fast and desperate. "I know I was awful to you. I know I don't deserve help. But you're the only one who ever actually took care of things. You always knew what to do. Can you please help me? Can you undo the divorce so Dad can get back on his feet and maybe he can help me and we can—" "Morgan," I said quietly, cutting her off. She went silent. I leaned back in my chair, still looking out at the park. My voice was calm, clinical, the same tone I used in the ER when gathering patient history from someone in crisis. "Where's your father right now?" Silence. Then, in a whisper, "Living in a motel off Highway 17. Near the truck stop. He can't help me. He can barely help himself." "Where's your mother?" Another pause, longer this time. "She said I made my choices and I need to live with them. He kicked us both out last week. Said she was done cleaning up our messes." I absorbed that. Lacey, who Morgan had defended so fiercely, who was supposed to be the loving mother Wyatt had returned to, had thrown them both out. "What about your friends?" "They're tired of hearing about it. They said I need to figure it out on my own." Morgan was crying now. Not the performative crying from her social media videos. Real crying. The kind that comes from realizing you've burned every bridge and there's no way back across the water. "Please, Addison. I'm begging you. I know I was horrible. I know I helped Dad cheat. I know I mocked you and posted things and made everything worse. But you always fix things. Can't you just help me one more time?" I took a breath. Considered my words carefully. Morgan listened to me. She went quiet, breathing hard through her tears. "I'm not happy you're hurting. I don't take pleasure in your suffering. I genuinely hope you find a way through this. Then help me. Please. But when you and your father decided I wasn't part of your family, I believed you. I rebuilt my life without you in it and I'm staying in that life. Addison. Every choice has consequences," I continued, my voice steady. The disrespect, the mockery, the public humiliation, helping your father cheat, filming me to post online. Those were your choices. The signed papers, the legal separation, the divorce, the loss of financial support. Those were the consequences. You need to understand that actions have weight. And you're feeling that weight now. I was stupid. I was 19 and stupid. You were old enough to know better. She sobbed openly now. So you won't help me at all? I can't, Morgan. Not because I hate you, but because you need to learn what your choices cost. And because I need to protect the peace I fought for. My voice wasn't cruel. It wasn't vengeful. It was just honest. I worked 12-hour shifts to keep your father fed and housed. I paid the bills he ignored. I gave you a place to live rent-free while you were home from college. And you thanked me by helping him cheat, mocking me online, and treating me like I was nothing. I paused. I'm not angry anymore, Morgan. But I'm also not going back. I can't fix this for you. You're going to have to fix it yourself. Silence stretched between us. I could hear her crying, could hear traffic in the background on her end. She was probably calling from outside somewhere. Finally, she whispered, "Okay. There are resources," I said softer now. "If you need help with the pregnancy, there are clinics, community centers, social services. I'm not leaving you with nothing, Morgan. I'm just not going to be the one who saves you. I understand. Good luck." She hung up without another word. I sat there holding the phone, looking out at the park as the last light faded from the sky. I waited for guilt to come, for regret, for some voice in my head to tell me I should have helped, should have been the bigger person, should have extended grace. It never came. Instead, I felt sad, genuinely sad that a 19-year-old girl was going through something so hard. But I also felt clear. Thought. Certain. I'd made the right choice. I stood up, went inside, and found Finn at the kitchen table doing calculus homework, pencil tapping against the paper as he worked through a problem. "Everything okay?" he asked without looking up. "Yeah, buddy. Everything's fine." He nodded, went back to his work. The next morning I woke up early. The apartment was quiet, light just starting to filter through the curtains. I made coffee, got dressed, and knocked on Finn's door. "You awake?" "Yeah. Want to get breakfast out?" He appeared in the doorway, hair messy, still in his pajamas. Really? Go get dressed." 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a booth at our favorite pancake place downtown. The restaurant smelled like butter and maple syrup, the kind of warm, comforting smell that makes everything feel okay. Finn ordered the stuffed French toast. I got a vegetable omelet and a side of fruit. We sat by the window watching people walk by on the sidewalk. Tourists with cameras. Locals in running gear. A man walking 3 dogs tangled in leashes. "There's a girl," Finn said suddenly, not looking at me, focused very intently on his orange juice. "Yeah. In my biology class. Her name's Emma." I smiled. "Emma sounds nice." "She is. He's really smart. She wants to be a marine biologist." "Are you going to ask her out?" His face flushed red. "Maybe. I don't know. Probably not." "You should." He glanced at me. Really? Worst she can say is no." He nodded slowly, considering. "Yeah. Maybe." We ate in comfortable silence for a while. He told me about his robotics project. They were building an automated sorting system for a local charity. I told him about a funny patient interaction from my shift yesterday. We talked about nothing important and everything important at the same time. When we finished, we walked to the park and threw a frisbee for a while. He was terrible at it. I was worse. We laughed every time one of us missed, which was most of the time. "Mom," he said after a particularly bad throw that sailed into the bushes. "Yeah. I'm really glad we moved. I'm glad it's just us now." I looked at him, 15 years old, growing into someone I was genuinely proud of, someone who'd survived chaos and come out kinder for it. "Me too, buddy." "Are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Yeah," I said. "I am." He smiled. "Good." That afternoon I sat on the balcony with my book while Finn worked on homework inside. The sun was warm. The park below was full of life. Kids playing, couples walking, someone practicing guitar on a bench. I thought about Morgan's call. About Wyatt living in a motel. About Lacey kicking them both out. About the life I could have stayed in. The life of fixing everyone else's messes, of being the responsible one, of sacrificing my peace for people who didn't value it. And I thought about the life I'd chosen instead. This apartment. This peace. This version of myself who didn't shrink to make room for someone else's ego. Some people only learn what they had when they lose the person who held everything together. And when that happens, you don't go back to teach them the lesson again. You keep walking toward the life you deserve. I picked up my book, turned the page, and kept reading. The sun was warm. My coffee was still hot. Finn was humming in his room. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be. If this story of calculated justice had you hooked from start to finish, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Addison handed Wyatt those separation papers and he signed without reading a single word. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more powerful stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.